This week, we're going to meet a man who was basically robbed from his childhood in school due to the fact that the school did not do anything to prevent his bullying. It's another one of those stories where the school has dropped the ball. We'll get right into it after I hit this music. This week, we are joined by Daniel Moen. He's an actor and stuntman. And if you've seen the show on Netflix called Obliterated, he was the Russian guy that eventually got shot in the bar.
Oh, yes.
Daniel, thanks for coming on
Thank you
today.
very much for having me.
So, Daniel, before we get into how you became an actor, voice actor, stuntman, tell us about what it was like growing up for you. Was it as adventurous as it is now as your life is?
Adventurous is one way to put it. Uh, it was it was tough. Uh, Debating on how much information I should share here, because like I'm 6'7" now. I've always been the big kid, no matter where I was. And for better or worse, being the big kid also came with that sort of automatic. When I see people getting bullied, I'd want to step in and stop it. And in elementary school, when you're the big kid, you step in and you stop it, and someone gets hurt. The school doesn't like that. And unfortunately,
How old were
uh,
you? How old were you again?
oh, elementary school,
Oh,
like
elementary school. Okay.
ages ago.
This-
But that's for better or worse. That's where the whole story starts. Is because there was uh, as a kid, I'd step in, stop bullying when I saw it happening, but I'd get physical because the people would get physical first. And the school I was at the time did not approve it, and they basically said, and this was at the 90s, so it was that time when stuff like this would happen, when the school would say, he cannot be here without being on medication of some sort. And so, when I was 7 years old, they started me on medication that, to be blunt, how to explain it, and this might be TMI, this might be like, hmm, but when I was 7 years old, they got me to a psychiatrist after stepping in, stopping bullying, and the other kid got hurt. Uh, the first medication they put me on was one called Stelazine. Uh, for those not in the know, Stelazine is an antipsychotic they are hesitant to give to prisoners because it is known to cause permanent nervous system damage, amongst many other things. If you actually watch some of my earlier films or student films I'm in, you'll see my hand, like they'll do some weird thing like that. And I'm not aware of that. That's a long term side effect left over from that. So, that being the starting point, and the medications changed after time, and at age 25, I finally got off them, got into a healthier life. We'll get into that story when we get into that story. But that made my my childhood and early years rough, and it was one of the big points I always got bullied on myself for, was because I'd be in that medical haze. There would be this, I wouldn't get that they were making fun of me, or I would, and I wouldn't be able to respond, or they'd just push me around. S-
I want to, before we go too far
Yeah.
into it, I'm still trying to wrap my head around why you had to go on medication because you stepped in to break
Stepped
up
in to break up.
someone being picked up.
Yeah, basically, it was a common event where I'd step in as someone else was being bullied, and again, I was the big.
So you've done this frequently, I
Yeah,
take it. You would step in to help kids
yeah.
out.
But one time,
Okay.
enough times that the school saw a pattern, the person I stepped in, to stop from bullying would throw a punch, and things would devolve from there. Because again, I'm still the big kid here, and so even though it's kids tussling, what I my my push for them, like, it wouldn't hurt them or maim them in a big way, but it would be just enough that they'd be able to go to the teacher and go, Dan hit me, and it's always me getting the bad end of the stick.
And the bully got away from
Oh,
it. Bully got away, got free.
every time. Like,
What did the kid that you stuck up for back you up?
rarely. Uh, and mind you, this is the times I can remember. It's been a
Yeah, I get
but
it.
sometimes they would, sometimes they'd run off, and that's what I knew. It was an instinctual thing for me. Is just I knew my role was to step in and help them. And whether they stuck around and helped out or played wit, no one ever really played witness. When it came to like bully tells on the teachers, the bully victim, they were gone. They were nowhere. It was now Dan stepped in and hit this kid for reasons we don't understand. Not Dan stepped in, stopped someone being bullied, and it got twisted by the bully to make me look like I had hit them for no reason.
Okay, so you get on those meds, it causes you these like twitches,
Yeah.
ticks,
And
and you're a super tall kid, which makes you a big
oh
target.
yes. And that's the funny thing is you would think me being big it would make some bullies stop. But for whatever reason, like especially it got worse in middle school, continued into high school, they would keep bullying me, keep pressing all the buttons. And apparently the whole goal was to see like how far they could go with me before I hit them and then get me into further trouble.
It's called little dog syndrome. That's what I call it,
Yeah.
little dog
Oh yeah.
syndrome. Because I have a miniature dachshund named Gus, and he always picks on the big
Yeah.
dogs. He doesn't care. These big dogs could squash him. He will pick on the big dogs. So little dog syndrome. I don't know why people have that as well. They see a big guy and they're like, you think it'd be the
Right.
opposite. They should be scared of you. They should leave you alone. But it's like, no, they're gonna go for the challenge and pick on
Every
you.
time. And again, it was because I'd had so much going on in the background, it just gave them more ammo to work with. And since I'd be working with a social worker or the counselors at the school, I'd always be told like, don't react, don't do anything, just come to us. I'd go to the teachers, they'd do nothing. And
Yeah, that's still true
yeah,
today,
ain't that
unfortunately.
the truth?
So their their option was go to them. Maybe they meant go to the social
Uh,
worker
no,
because the teachers didn't do anything. Who are you supposed to go
right?
to?
Like it was supposed to be just find a teacher, find someone of authority. Which some of the schools it was a security guard who would proceed to do nothing. Sometimes it was a teacher who would proceed to do nothing. Like the only time things ever got changed or acknowledged was when they got escalated to the point where I had an emotional outburst and things happened.
Oh, then because now you're the crazy kid now.
Exactly. Exactly. and I will note right now my life is drastically different. Uh I've been off medication since I was about 25 and the main thing that got me off it was I I lucked out and found a man by the name of Gary Choi, who he ran his own kung fu school, and I'd sort of become friends with him for a bit. And at one point, things were going really bad in my life, and he says, Dan, how about this? I'll help you get mentally and physically into shape. You just have to do everything I say. All right. I became a live in student of the kung fu school. And starting out, it was rough. Like starting out, I still had a lot of like the leftover tendencies of being, admittedly, a spoiled kid who was not fully mentally there. But it was the mixture of exercise and support from the kung fu family and a whole lot of regimentation. When class was on, I had to be there. There was one time, this is going to sound terrible for people who aren't in the martial arts way of life, but there was one time I tried to pretend like, oh man, I'm really tired. I'm going to nap through class. And my Sifu comes downstairs to my room and just goes, Dan, class is on. Let's get you up there. Nah, man, I'm tired. At the time, I weighed 400 pounds. He literally grabs me, puts me on his shoulder, walks me up the stairs, and I'm just screaming, no, no! I get set down in horse stance, and he just goes, horse stance until I'm happy. That sounds terrible to people who aren't, used to like sometimes the
Wait, were you literally living in the kung fu
not in the
studio?
studio, the house. The way we had it was
Okay.
there was the school that we had set up in the garage, and we matted out, trained up, and then we had the house that was right next to it. So it was a two level house, but training was actually in the adjoined garage. But yeah, it was rough, but it was necessary. And I mean, hell, look at me now. I'm acting. I'm doing stunts. I'm working my way up in the industry. I'm living on my well, technically on my own. I've got roommates, but there was a long time where my folks, as much as I love them, there was a long time where they were kind of convinced I was either going to live in a group home or under a bridge. And it wasn't because they had no faith in me or anything like that. It was more because the mental state that they had seen me in and everything else kind of left them there. Anyway, maybe that's a bit too much for an anti-bullying podcast.
No, but I'm curious though. Going back to your school
Yeah,
days, 7 years old, you get put on medications because you were trying to be the kid who stuck up for the little
yeah.
kids or getting picked on. High school life was pretty much the same for
Oh,
you. You just got picked
picked on
on.
incessantly. And
Nobody would help you out. There's no help because you were considered the odd kid or the kid with mental health
yeah,
problems. How much, looking back at it now, how much would your issues be tied to bullying though?
to
Like, did bullying start this whole
it
thing?
started it. To put it into perspective, I like telling stories because it's I find it impacts, but put it in perspective.
Oh, we got plenty of time.
Thank
No
you.
worries.
To put it into perspective, uh, Monday through Friday of my week was basically a war zone. It was go to school, be bullied from period one till even getting off the bus. Uh, be told I couldn't react in any way, and uh, my weekends were sacred to me because those were the few moments of respite that I could finally just exist and be happy. If it hadn't have been for like if my life had been with more people being more understanding, or if it hadn't have been for bullying, or if it hadn't been for systems stepping in the way of me being able to resolve bullying or being effective at resolving bullying, things would be very, very different. I feel I'd be in a much I don't want to say better, but I'd be in a much different, maybe healthier place. Like for better or worse, the entirety of my grade school life was spent being ceaselessly bullied and told I could do nothing in return. And that's the harsh truth of it. Anyway, continue on.
Did your parents see this bullying behavior? Like, did they see that's not saying yeah, bully behavior, but did your parents know that you were getting picked on in school?
To an extent. Uh like it wasn't something I wouldn't update them every day of like every time it happened, but they got updated by the school when things boiled over and I had an emotional outburst, stuff like that. And it would only be then that they'd find out that the bullying had been going on for a long while. And they'd ask the school to like, hey, can you guys please do something about this? Can you monitor the other students? Like there were three main guys who were the biggest bullies of my entire school career. And there was always the like, hey, can you just separate them? Can you move them around? And the school goes, "Mm, that wasn't very helpful.
So those emotional outbursts, was that due to kids just picking
Yeah,
on you?
like
And what did the school call it? Like, what was their reason why you had emotional outbursts? You're just unstable mental behavior?
eh, they the ones that would basically pick up the pieces would attribute it to unstable mental behavior or uh new meds, or it would be very, very rarely that any of them would recognize this has been going on a long time and this is Dan reacting like any person would. They've had enough of the bullshit and they're saying stop. Uh, but that's what the school tried to recognize it as mental instability or inability to deal with emotions rather than kind of seeing it as regardless of this kid's mental state, these people are incessantly pressing on
Yeah.
him. And
In reality, the school robbed you of your
oh yeah,
childhood.
absolutely. It's not something that's fun to think about, but that's the truth of it. I I will say this. As much as I absolutely despised the bullying, as much as it made every day hell, I I don't know if I would be where I am without that sort of mental haze I was in. If it wasn't for the bullying, I'd probably if it wasn't for the bullying but still the medication, I'd probably still be where I am, but acting is a weird career because it's 99% putting in resumes and hearing no. And I theorize or I feel that like if I hadn't had to go through that hard stuff, maybe not as much bullying, but if I hadn't had to go through that experience of having to hear no so often, of having to go through some of the toughest stuff in my life, maybe I wouldn't if didn't go through all of that, I would not get used to having to hear no. And the first time I heard no as an actor in that timeline, I'd give up. So like you said, that people people who have to go through bullying and go through that, they do tend to come out in a way stronger or in a way capable of doing bigger and better things. And I guess that's born in part from the resilience that has to be gained from going through that experience, but also the heightened empathy you get from it. Because I
Yeah.
don't know many people who were bullied that in turn have become just the most despicable people. It's usually,
I've had a few guests who were bullied, then they became the bully and got the taste of power, and then that was new for them. They loved having that power, and became jerks, but then eventually they turned their
oh
life
yeah,
around. So, but then there's also people who've been bullied and end up their life is not so good. There's just mental health issues on top of it. On top of it, they can't
sure.
escape it. We're one of the lucky people that are able to get, which I also want to contribute. I really think martial arts has a big role
Oh,
into how to combat bullying, not just learning the self defense aspect of it, but
absolutely.
in martial arts, it's you learn about perseverance and resiliency. You don't learn that in baseball. You don't learn that because in baseball, when you're in high school for baseball sports, there's called a tryout.
Mhm.
If you don't make the team, you don't make the team. How does that teach you anything about resiliency or perseverance? It
Yeah,
doesn't. Martial arts, you go at your own pace.
yeah.
And I had that experience myself, even though when I joined martial arts, I got picked on big time. I mean, the bullying just increased because now they're trying to get me to quit martial arts.
The weird thing is,
But
I while I was in school, and I actually did, I was part of a Shotokan karate school, and I will say that that helped immensely. Whether it was technically learning how to fight, but also I was always better at kata than I was at sparring, and that was just the ability to work on and hone yourself through martial arts was honestly one of the few saving graces I'd say I'd have during that time. It like Sensei Westfall, he was a guy that was strict, but he was also very, very understanding. And I owe a lot of what I have now to him. As much as I owe Sifu Gary for helping me get to a good state, I owe so much to Sensei Westfall to helping me get through some of the toughest times of my life by learning forms, by learning kata, by training in martial arts and working to be better. That that gave me a sense of self-worth. Even if I didn't do well in sparring, even if I didn't get to use martial art fighting and going against bullying, just learning the discipline was
yeah.
immensely helpful.
What age did you start martial arts?
I The funny thing is, it was around the same time I stopped that bullying. It was probably about 8 years old, and
Okay.
I made it to first dan at 16, and then life happened real hard. But it was yeah, I'd say about 8 years at Shotokan Karate, and then it's been from 25 till now. I still practice Southern Kung Fu.
Okay, so throughout your whole school life, you were in martial arts
Yeah,
during
during the hellish times.
during the time you were so you had the school calling you crazy, unstable mental
Mhm.
health, but you're at a martial arts school and you're probably normal
Oddly enough,
child.
yeah. Sensei Westfall didn't treat me any different than the rest, and most of that was just I realized maybe instinctually, but not logically, that I was there to learn something and it was helping. There are a lot of nights I didn't want to go, but it helped me immensely. And part of that was indeed because he treated me just like any other kid.
Yeah. I'm still trying to figure out your story here a little bit
Apologies.
because the school saw you totally different than what the martial arts school did, and you were having your emotional breakdowns at school. Did you have them anywhere else? Was it always
It
at
was almost always
school?
at school because that's the only
Why couldn't they put why couldn't they put the 2 to 2 together?
I wish I knew. I Part of it I feel is that it was during the 90s, and that was an era where over medication was rampant, and our understanding of psychological and mental illnesses and all that was just starting to grow past what we saw in horror movies in the 80s. So I hit that rough patch in time where people weren't sure what to do and were still holding on to some old beliefs and just starting to learn that, well, maybe that's not how it is. Then again, I wish they had seen, like, he only really, like, gets angry and breaks stuff at school. What's happening there? Well, he says he's getting bullied. Wait a minute.
No, he's mentally unstable. That's
Yeah,
not bullying. It's sadly that's true today for a lot of kids that I work
yeah,
with. Um, it's not the school's fault. It's not the bully's fault. It's the kids just mentally unstable, and it's so
I agree.
unfair. I don't know how you change that.
Oh, that's one of those systems that
I feel like it's a popularity contest. With the people who've been on my podcast, the bully usually had family that were popular, and it couldn't be them. It's not their fault.
uh,
Or we gotta leave that family alone. We can't talk about that.
right. And it when it comes looking back, I have the joy of being alive and be able to look back and see something. And yeah, I could see how a lot of it is a popularity contest, or for some of them, it might have literally been middle school is hell for everybody because everything's changing, and so it's survival for them. You know, they found a group.
But it yeah, and that's still true today, but it
Oh,
shouldn't be
hands
that
down, it
way.
shouldn't. I'm not saying I forgive the behavior.
I yeah, but that's just as society though, that's how we are accepting it.
True.
Part of growing up. You're gonna get picked on.
Uh, yeah. Ideally, it'd be great if this didn't exist, but it does, and that's why I'm really, really happy you are putting work together to combat it. Because as much as we want to trust, teachers and schools to have the best interests in heart, they're not going to catch everything. They're not going to catch 70% of what happened. So I'm very, very happy that you are making people aware of these things. You're teaching kids ways to deal with the bullying, everything.
Yeah, what I'm learning, you can make people aware of it, but as far as getting this culture in the school to
Hmm.
change, not gonna happen because they don't wanna admit that they have a bullying issue because it can hurt their I was in a meeting, I'm not gonna say which meeting it was, 'cause it'll probably hurt some people that I'm a part of, but the schools can't admit to bullying because it can hurt them financially,
Oh,
whatever. So they use these terms called conflicts, which they are not conflicts because we've discussed conflicts on my show many
mhm.
times. And if you didn't hear that episode, how conflicts were like me and you, Dan, were fighting over a TV remote. Who gets it first? That's a
Yeah,
conflict. Bullying is your intent to hurt somebody, but schools don't want to admit it. They don't want to. There's something. There's a. They're looking out for
yeah.
themselves. Put it
It's
this
a
way.
it's a probably a mixture of financial and legal covering of their ass.
And we got some parents who want to quote unquote use their voice and be defiant, which doesn't help their situation any
No.
better. You got some parents who help their kids out, which is great. Every step of the way, they'll battle with the school,
Yeah.
and we got some schools who just have a zero tolerance.
Eh,
That if a kid tries to bully somebody, the kids are taught to say, "We don't do that here." And when you can teach a culture of kids to do that,
right. But
you
like
know,
with the
um,
it's like people can say anything and it will like sometimes it'll stop nothing. We don't do that here. That sucks.
that could be true for that one kid, but if you get say or number wise 5 versus 1 saying you can't do that here, there's gonna be an impact on that one kid. If it's 1 against 1, yeah, you might be able to see that punch
Right.
coming, but we need to start with these kids at the early age, and it doesn't help that, we have parents, know, right now politics doesn't help with bullying at all because all you see on the news is, yeah, one side blaming the other side blaming the other side. There's no unity. The government will say we're trying to unite everybody. We'll only be united if you agree to our beliefs, which no one's
Right.
going to do that. We just don't accept people for who they
Right.
are
And it
anymore.
feels like they're
And
arguing about stuff over here when what we need is nowhere near that. Like
yeah,
anyway.
like right now at the time of this recording, the biggest thing that the government that both sides are working on is the TikTok ban. As far as cyberbullying, great, manage it. But don't we have bigger issues than
Then
trying to shut down TikTok?
right? Ma-
I mean, if that's the case, we should shut down Facebook too because they're selling our data like
Exact
crazy, and we agreed to
exactly.
it. We
Oh,
agreed to it.
that's always been the part of that that's bothered me. Is just like they're selling our data. Everywhere is selling your data. Oh,
Oh yeah, when you go sign up, you go to those like we have county fairs in the summertime here. You go sign up to win something. That's giving out your information. It's going to be
yep,
sold. It's accepted. If you don't want to your information to be sold, just have don't have anything. No social
right?
media, nothing.
Like, and that's
They track you. There's a thing called Facebook Pixel. So people always wonder how come if I see a site, I see all these ads. Well, it's called Facebook Pixel, and I do this, and so does every other business owner does this. When we on our website, there's a code embedded in there for Facebook to help track you. So if you go to my website, Facebook knows that you're interested in my business. They're going to start hitting you up with all my
yeah,
ads. That's why when you go look at Target, you can get a bunch of Target ads. That's just what Facebook does. That's how they make money. They need to sell you something in order that you're interested in. They can't just throw out random ads that you may not be interested in. They're really smart.
yeah.
But yeah, but anyways, but TikTok is a bigger threat to our country right now than anything else,
According to
which
the powers
is
that
sad.
be.
I think. And for if TikTok gets shut down, does it affect me? No, not really, because the algorithms are not on my side
Right,
anyways. So to me, my life will be the same with or without TikTok. But it's still something like, really, this is all we got to fight about is TikTok
right.
right now.
Uh, We could.
So Daniel, let's talk about you now because you were just recently in Obliterated on Netflix, which I'm very bummed out they did not make season. They're not making season two right now because that was an amazing
Oh,
show.
it was. Unfortunately, it's right now Netflix has that tendency to be the one season grinder, but it's it was still good getting there. And if you got time, got a fun story on how I got to be stunts on that one.
Let's talk about that quickly, and let's talk about not only were you on Netflix, you're on a Super Bowl commercial, which I found. I had to pause the video,
Yep.
but the fact that you were in it, not me, it's still a big deal. I mean, you can't take away. Oh, you're only in for like a
Yeah.
millisecond. While we're doing it, no.
Still.
So you're in a Super Bowl
Yeah.
commercial. So how'd you get
Oh,
there from a kid being
how'd I get
bullied
from a kid being bullied to being in a Super Bowl commercial and on Netflix and in a feature film?
and feature film? Bang Bang
Oh
Betty.
yeah.
I love that
Oh, it's
name,
a
by the
great
way.
name, and there may or may not be a third one with a certain returning character. I just have to.
It has to be a prequel. It has to be a prequel, unless you didn't really get
I mean,
shot.
I'm trying to talk to the director and see what I can make happen. But
Hey, I posted a Facebook thing on that post like, "Hey, I really liked I can't remember what your character was. We need to see more of that guy."
oh, thank you for the assist. So how I got from being super bullied, being fairly mentally unwell, to starting things in Hollywood. Oh, so the big one. I talked about it a little bit before. Uh, Around age 25, things had gotten really rough for me. And I wonder how much detail I should put into this one. Oy. Uh, the absolute shortest version is when I moved in with became a live-in student for the kung fu school. I that first the support of the kung fu family and the discipline of actually being part of that system helped helped me sort of materialize completely as a complete human being. It helped me realize, oh wow, I actually have self-worth. Wow, I have a lot of hard work ethic. Wow, I'm capable of a lot more than I thought I was. And then from there, uh, I was able to. I got a stable job that I held on to for 3 years, which for old Dan, for before, that was an impossibility. And now I had this job I'd held on to for 3 years, and at the same time, I had found out that where I was living in Colorado had three major film schools or film programs nearby. And so I just one point decided, I've always wanted to be an actor. Like I'd always taken acting classes and improv. I'd always wanted to be an actor, but I hadn't given myself the chance. And so I started auditioning for student films and for small stuff and short films happening around Colorado. And the thing they don't tell you in film, if you're above a certain height, you're a bit harder to cast. And being 6'7", I was far outside that height. Uh, but at some point, I was taking a day off, and my Sifu comes over to me and says, "Hey, Dan, here you're trying to be an actor. Want to learn how to do stunts?" And he taught me some of the basics of reactions, of fight choreography. And suddenly, when I go to those auditions and say, I'm an actor and I'm also a stuntman, they're a stuntman, you say. And suddenly, those student films and short films wanted to work with me more because they had two in one. They had an actor who was actually doing really, really good, and they had a stunt person who looked phenomenal on film in the same person. And so I kept booking more and more work like that. And eventually, 2019, I started looking into moving to New Mexico because Albuquerque has a sensational film program. They actually have, like, Netflix has a studio here, Universal has a studio here, Disney. They're all really secretive about it, but they have a huge.
Not
Uh,
anymore. Now
Not
we all know
anymore.
about it.
It's a secret that's out. But after getting a whole lot of work with in Colorado and doing a lot of networking, like I came to LA from time to time and I worked with Mike Chad of XMA to train up on more stunts. Uh, got to audition and meet the casting director for Power Rangers. Like I lucked out and got to work with so many cool people and build up my resume and networking list as best I could before moving here. And I moved to Albuquerque February 2020, just before the lockdowns hit hard. But I got lucky, and there was so many non-union jobs that were needing people that I just got in, and so I kept. Suddenly, my work is bigger. It's not just student films. I'm doing short films. I'm doing background on feature films, on TV shows, and then the biggest one so far is definitely Obliterated, where originally I was brought on as featured. You know, one of the background that you'll see a lot. It was Russian heavy, and there was one night. It was supposed to be sort of the last night we were filming background guys, and for whatever reason, the wardrobe person wasn't where they were supposed to be, and I was trying to turn in my wardrobe, and I decided, I'll just go back to base camp. I go back there and I see this guy walking across who's obviously got stunt pads on, like he looks like he's going to take a fall. And I take a chance and say, "Hey man, how's it going?" We start chatting. I show him my newest fight reel, and there's this pause, and he goes, "Hold on a second." And just by a chance, the stunt coordinator for that day, Lloyd Bateman, is walking by, and that guy waves him down. Lloyd, come over here for a sec. They start talking, and I suddenly feel like maybe they're in business mode. I need to back away, and the guy locks eyes with me, just going, "Don't you move." Lloyd, this is Dan. Dan, show him that thing you showed me. 53 seconds later, Lloyd says, "All right, send me all your information." A couple days later, I'm on set getting shot in the head, and it's been astounding because it's I've been lucky to be able to work almost exclusively as an actor and a stuntman and make so much happen in what feels like such a short amount of time. I only officially decided to go work on acting in 2018. And so it's been 6 years. 6 years from being in student films to being on Netflix. And I'm,
Yeah, because I know we've met in 2021 at with Eric
yeah,
the Trainer on his online workouts, and I've been watching you since 2021. I've noticed how fast, maybe at times it seems fast, but you're moving up pretty quickly.
like I said, I got very lucky I got support from my kung fu family and my blood family. I found a good place here that the rent was very cheap that I now own somehow. And uh, I was lucky enough to be able to spend my time exclusively working to make myself better, get an agent, get more work. It was rough during the
Awesome.
strike, but been making it happen.
So, Daniel, before you wrap up here, any words of advice for parents who may be dealing with their kids who are being bullied, what they can do to help support them?
So I know there's a tendency in people's minds to sort of downplay bullying, to attribute it to that's growing up or like it can't be that bad. And my big thing is listen to them and try to work with them because at that point in their life, that is their life. That is their entire experience. So listen to them, find sources much like yours to help both of you learn how to more successfully deal with bullying. Because I feel what hurt me the most was the school downplayed it. My parents only started to listen during the times when it blew up. And so listen to your kid, listen to the people getting bullied, look into ways to combat it. That's my big one.
Daniel, if people want to follow you, how can they do
Really
that?
easy place to find me is on Instagram as just.another.dan, or check me out on Facebook. Should be the similar name title.
Daniel, I want to thank you again for coming on
Hey,
my
thank you very
podcast.
much for having me. It's been nice.